Hi, I'm Shannon Grissom. Are you looking to ignite your creativity? Or how about be inspired by a steady stream of muses? Welcome to Painterly Life, the podcast that celebrates those who create, inspire, and innovate. So whether you're looking to spark your next big idea, reignite your passion, or simply soak in some creative energy, this is the place for you. Painterly Life, where every guest is a new muse, just for you. Well, hi there. Welcome to the Painterly Life podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Grissom. Today we have a vibrant, phenomenal artist, Karen Lynn Ingalls. Karen's work has been exhibited coast to coast, from the Lincoln Center in New York City to the Charles Schulz Museum. She's been everywhere. Her journey through illness, inner criticism, and the loss of her studio in a wildfire has shaped her belief in creativity as a force for healing and resiliency. Now she's based in Santa Rosa, California, and she continues to create, teach, help others reconnect with their creative voice, especially during times of challenging moments. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much. I do have one thing to add. My studios, I actually have 2 studios, are in Santa Rosa, but I still live in Calistoga. I didn't lose my home in the wildfire. I lost my studio.
Lost your
so
studio.
I still have my home. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, did you lose all of your art? I mean, everything,
everything going back to college, except what, by a miracle, I had not returned after a show to the studio, what turned out to be the day of the fire. I had this little weird miraculous intervention, and I thought, I'll do it tomorrow. And of course, tomorrow, I think of those as my miracle paintings.
Yes. Yeah, well, I'm excited to get into all that.
Thank you.
Let's start. Really, your journey is just phenomenal. Let's start at the beginning, when you were just a wee child. What was your life like growing up? What was your creative life?
Well, I started drawing. This is a little odd. I drew an anatomically correct person when I was 18 months old. And
Whoa.
I think I had, looked at something and was just fascinated, went home, drew it small in ballpoint pen. My mother wrote, Karen was 18 months old on it.
Wow.
So my parents got me a little card table and folding chairs that I could sit and draw at, child size. On a shelf in my closet, I had an endless supply of paper. And as I grew a little older, my dad made an easel for me. And so mostly I drew all the time. And I drew people. That's what I just loved to draw. So I got lots of encouragement and support. So
yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah. Now, I know you've done a lot of people portraits, but you had this major shift to landscapes.
Yes.
Can you tell me how that occurred?
Well, that was in the 1998, actually. Wow. I was living in Monterey County. Oh, yeah, so it's been a while now. I was living in Monterey County. I'd gone there for a teaching job. And an artist friend got a bunch of us together and proposed that we paint to protect a sensitive wetlands area that was threatened by development. It's called Elkhorn Slough, and the health of the entire Monterey Bay depends on the slough. And if they had completed this development of 200 homes and 9 holes of golf on the northern end of the slough, all those pesticides would have gone into the slough where there are so many animals. It's like a nursery area for a lot of the animals and lots of birds. So we did that. We were basically the PR wing of a group that was mobilized. And it was amazing because it got a lot of attention. My friend was very good at contacting papers and proposing stories, and they came out and covered it. And people started looking at it differently because before that, it was like, oh, the Monterey Peninsula. Oh, it's so gorgeous. What? The area by the slough? That's where we put the power plant and the landfill and all the stuff nobody wants to look at. So it drew attention to beauty that was there. And it worked. Ultimately, it was like Mother Nature was rooting for us. And the day we wound up having a show at the county courthouse, the opening was a couple of days before the Board of Supervisors was going to vote on this project. 3 of them came to our opening, and the week before, the Audubon Society had their conference in Sacramento, drove out in buses to the slough, saw it, drove back and voted to declare it a national treasure. Wow. So all of these things came together, and for the first time in that they could remember, the board voted unanimously to have a moratorium of several years. And then when it came up again, no dice. It was not approved. And in the meantime, the slough is now, it's internationally recognized as a place for birders and bird lovers to go and see birds on the Pacific Flyway, among other things. So.
Wow, what a powerful story. And it really illustrates the power of art.
Yes. That's what I learned from it, because before that, I just loved doing what I did. And when other people were touched by it, I loved that. But to see what we painted, what we did, make a difference in people's minds and how they perceived, what was beautiful, how they understood the land. It was, wow. It just was so moving that, that we were able to do that with our art.
Well, you've been able to do so much with your art through several challenges. I mean, you've had 3 main challenges over the years. You had the Tubbs fire. You had challenges with your inner critic, and illness. Let's start with your inner critic, because I battle with that one a lot.
So we all do, right?
Yeah.
We all do. Yeah.
Yeah. So how have you dealt with your inner critic? How do you work with that?
Well, it goes back to when I was in junior college, and I was very fortunate when I graduated. I was one of 5 students who were chosen by the faculty and given a scholarship. Wow. We didn't even know about this. They got scholarship money and they decided to divide it between 5 of us, so we were recognized, and I was doing good work. I got my work into a juried show, big regional juried show. 1 other student got something in. And otherwise it was like our teachers were in this and all these professionals. And then end of the show, I go get my painting, and it's like, okay, now what do I do? How do you make a living as an artist, right? So I got a job, but I kept working on, I kept drawing, I kept taking classes, but my inner critic started popping up, and I would hear this little voice, it's like, oh, well, that's not so good. What'd you do there? And then it got more and more insistent to the point where I wouldn't even make a mark, and I'd hear this, oh, yeah, right. You think you're going to be any good at that? I mean, I was. But it didn't matter. That voice was there. And it got to the point where I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And I was, I couldn't do my drawing. I had a job. I would show up for my job. I would do that. And then I would go home and cry. I just would cry every night. And this went on for about a year. And then one day I was watching the Phil Donahue show. Remember Phil Donahue?
Yeah.
Had to be of a certain age, right? And he had a psychologist on who was talking about mental depression. And I'm listening and thinking, oh, that's what's going on. I'm depressed. And that gave me a handle on it. And I started slowly crawling back out of it. And I realized I did not want to ever go back there again. And so if I would hear that voice, it's like, no, get out of here. You're not helping me. And over time, I came across little methods that people would use and that I could use to just stop it, to divert it, it's been very effective for me and for my students because we all deal with that. And I've seen one time I was teaching the grandchildren of folks who had been coming out to Napa Valley for a few years, and I would teach them when they would visit every year. And the last year they were there, they had their grandkids. And the youngest one looked at what she was drawing, which was wonderful, and compared it to her older sisters.
Oh.
And she started crying. And so I was sitting there and saying, honey, look, she's been practicing for 3 more years than you. That's not fair. This is really good. You're really good. You're an artist. But that happens to so many people. And we need that affirmation to know, don't compare yourself. Don't listen to that darn critic. Anyway.
So what are your favorite tools for firing your inner critic?
Well, one fun one is to give it a job. So it's fun to hear what my students come up with in terms of a job. One young artist that I began mentoring when she was about 7, when she hit that age where she started getting critical, and she's telling me, and I said, okay, I want you to give your critic a job. And so she thought about it a minute. It has to go do that. Can't come back till it's done. So she thinks about it. And then she starts drawing again. A few minutes later, she says, it's back. And so I said, well, what did you tell it to do? And she said, well, I told it to go to Calmart to get chocolate. Now, this was where my studio was, on a ranch 6 miles out of town. And I said, well, but it doesn't have the car, so that means it has to walk all the way. And it can't come back unless it has the chocolate. And so she went back to work, and that took care of it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So whatever
know,
job you come up with, maybe it's you have to go to Hawaii and spend some time on a beach for me. and of course, then it has to go to the airport. It has to, do the whole thing. Oh, you can't come back yet. You haven't even gotten to the airplane.
almost like Oz, the man behind the curtain,
Yes.
all these impossible jobs. I love that.
Yes. One of my young students, I was giving private lessons during COVID to her and her father, and she was wearing a top that had watermelon designs on it and colors. And she said, I am sending mine to search all over the world for the most scrumptious piece of watermelon in the entire world.
That's great.
Kids come up with the most imaginative things. A lot of my adult students will say, it's I'm going to have it dust everything in the house. it's doing cleaning today. They're all good.
Now you have on your website. Do you have a download for tips and tools for people?
I have an ebook that I wrote called 9 Ways to Tap into Your Creativity and Tame Your Inner Critic. And I have to set it up so that because right now it's not just a download, but people can contact me and ask,
great.
and I'll be glad to send it to them. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll put that in the show notes so that they know how to reach you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Now, you've had other challenges. I know you had major health issues for a while there. And so do you mind speaking about that and how you overcame that?
Well, I went down to Monterey County for a teaching job. I'm credentialed to teach English and art. There were no art jobs at the time, so I was actually teaching English. And there was an unrecognized viral epidemic in the Salinas Valley where I was teaching. And we didn't know what it was. We just thought it was this weird flu that wiped you out. Well, I got diagnosed ultimately with chronic fatigue syndrome. And after I'd been sick for about 6 weeks, I thought, okay, I'm just going to take a few days off, get my grades in for the quarter, take a few days off, get over this darn thing. And I never went back. I was mostly bedridden for the next 9 years. And It was a slow process of getting back. And it was just, not something I would recommend, but it slowly brought me back to making art that I didn't have time for when I was teaching English. So it started by, I didn't have enough energy to draw or paint, but I could cut up magazine photos. And I had an entire collection of National Geographics that became part of collages. So I had my scissors, I had glue stick, I just did them 8x10s on Bristol paper, and I would do as much as I could, and then I would go lie down again. And every one of those was a prayer for healing. And slowly over time, I began with the help of all kinds of therapies, including traditional Chinese medicine and Reiki and amazing doctors and medical professionals that I eventually got to the point where I could function.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, wow. Reiki is so powerful. I had one session where I felt just like this huge dump through my body.
Yes.
And I heard in my mind's ear, Elvis has left the building.
Oh, how funny.
And I'm in the middle of the Reiki session. I start cracking up. I can't stop laughing. She goes, what just happened there? I said, Elvis.
Oh, that's
but whatever
funny.
it was, it was a major shift. So that's it's good to use all the tools that we have at our disposal to make shifts.
And I was very fortunate that the doctor that I went to recognized, because not very many people at that time recognized chronic fatigue syndrome. They, may have thought it was psychological, or, they just didn't know. And he did, which still, we didn't know exactly a lot about it. People were finding out more about it, but at least I knew what was going on. So I was lucky in that respect too. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you've been through so much. I mean, between the health, the inner critic, and then the Tubbs fire.
Yeah.
And your work completely shifted again after that. So
sure.
Let's get into a little more. We touched on it earlier, but the Tubbs fire, it was so traumatic. Please,
Yeah. Well, I've been through a lot before. And when I began painting again, I did like one painting at a time, slowly as I was able to. So I had learned to adjust. But when that happened, it didn't really hit me until I went there, when we were finally able to see the site, and everything was, it was just ashes. I had half of a barn, a rehabbed chicken barn, and it had a metal roof. It had skylights. It had beautiful light. And the metal roof had just kind of folded. It just melted over the remnants of the, metal furniture pieces. And I walked around and I saw, in the ashes, there were two places where I saw little fragments of paintings, and I knew which paintings those were because of the color and where they were. And the next morning, I woke up and I felt just dead inside. It was just, it could have been really, really bad. And then I got a phone call from a friend who was at our local coffee house here in Calistoga, the Calistoga Roastery. And the person who was supposed to have a show there had canceled. And so the owner wanted to know, could I put something up? Now, I didn't have many paintings. I did have my miracle paintings. But I thought, wait a minute, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something with the ashes. And so I said, give me 2 weeks. I went back and I scraped up the ashes of my paintings, and I made texture medium and with acrylic medium, and I took photographs of the melted metal roof, and there were all kinds of spots left by the fire, and I could see landscapes in them. And I used those as compositions for abstract landscapes that had the ashes in them. So I was literally rising from the ashes. But wow, it was, and it was incredible therapy for me. And then by sharing them on the walls of the coffee house where we were all recovering, a lot of my friends had lost their homes, their barns, or it had been really, really close, and we'd all been evacuated, and we were, rising from the trauma, and it was something we had all experienced. So to have it there in what was essentially like a little community center where everybody gathered, it meant a lot. It meant a lot. So
wow.
Yeah.
So Was there any sort of, I mean, you hear of, like the Burning Man, how that started when as a conscious decision to release work.
Yeah.
Was there anything after the trauma? Was there anything positive in starting fresh, kind of like a clean slate?
Well, it led to unexpected things. So this is where I really learned that the challenges, take them on, make art. They will lead you to someplace new. And I made a video about the process, and just a little video with still photos and music and captions, and I shared it on Facebook, and it got reshared and reshared and reshared, and it was speaking to people, and then I connected through that. I connected with a couple of other artists who had been through the same thing. They had both lost their homes and studios, and I had other artist friends who did that too. But we shared studio space for a time, and it led to things that I would never have expected. We were interviewed by a wonderful writer who's now retired for the San Francisco Chronicle, and a detail of one of my paintings was on the front page of the Chronicle.
Wow.
I mean, it's like, how often does that happen for artists?
Yeah.
There were art centers in the area and galleries that did shows about the art that all the artists in the area created, because we weren't the only ones. We were all doing that because we needed to, and it mattered. And the art had power. It spoke to other people too. And the Petaluma Arts Center had a show, and they chose my painting to be the image of the show on the posters, and it even was on a billboard. And it's like, how often does that happen for artists? And it just, again, reinforced the power of what we can do with our creativity, how it can speak to people in ways that, that matter, that just matter. So that was
incredible.
It was an incredible lesson.
Yeah.
And it was, a long climbing back, but literally, we were rising from the ashes.
Well, that's a common theme in your entire story. And I love that no matter what happens to you, you keep rising. You are such an inspiration.
Thank you.
For people starting out in a creative way of life, what would you want to partake to them so that they would be inspired?
Tap into your creativity. Do what you want to do. Don't let anything hold you back. Don't listen to the critics, inner or outer. Do you. Just do it. The more you do, the more you develop your skills, the more you'll be able to express what's in your heart, what's in your soul. And don't copy somebody else, because, for each person, they're the only one who can express what's in them. And that's what's important. It's important to know for each person to express their own voice, whether it's visual or musical or written or in performance. It's that creativity, that, our perspective, and we're the only ones who can do that. So it's like, you do you. and make art. because art has power.
It does.
It does.
I think people can resonate with the authenticity that comes from being true to yourself and just going for whatever's coming out of you. I used to feel that so I've got work that's more realistic and then work that's just way out there. And I used to think that the way out there wasn't as good, that my abstract wasn't as good, that, and that people wouldn't get it. And at times have different audiences for the different types of work that I create.
Yeah.
But it's not any worse. It's not, I was beating myself up about that kind of thing. And instead, I got to the point where I would honor what I was creating. No matter, yeah. And it took me a while to do that. It really did. So, that's a good point. I do want to touch on one other thing because you've done public art installations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you just, you not only have you experienced much joy, but you share the joy by doing them. So could you tell us a little bit about your public art?
Sure. This behind me was actually part of a design for one I did. This was some years ago. There was just so much division and hatred and children were being affected. And I thought, no, we're better than that. And I was photographing landscapes, and I came to a stop sign, and somebody on a fence had a handmade poster, and it had the word hate in it. And I thought, everybody who sits at the stoplight has that radiating out of them. Oh, we don't need that. And I just, I went home and it stayed with me. And I thought, well, what if somebody saw a heart instead? Maybe that would just make them smile. And maybe they would feel a little better. Maybe they would smile at somebody else and, pass that along. Maybe that person would need that, Maybe they would need to have somebody smile at them. What if we could just lighten up and get into our compassion, our friendship, our love for each other, love for humanity. So I started sketching out all kinds of ideas and brainstorming things, and it wound up being 2 projects. One in Calistoga, where we made heart art that lined all the trees on the main street in town, Lincoln Avenue. Oh. And they were all strung together with beads, and they had inspirational quotations about love and kindness and compassion. And the word "we love you" translated into as many languages as Google could translate at the time.
That's great.
It was fun. So I gathered people in the community together. We all worked on it, and it was amazing. And then a dear friend of mine was the elementary school teacher, the music teacher in St. Helena, and we put together something for that. She had her students for their spring concert do music that was all about love and kindness and compassion and friendship. And they made heart art too, at the elementary school and with another friend of mine who is the art director at the St. Helena Boys and Girls Club. And we decorated the auditorium walls and the entrance to the auditorium. So people saw all this heart art as they walked in. And then the kids were amazing. And they got it. They totally got it. After she had them, she was talking with them about this, and they started working on the songs. The kids started making posters and putting them in the entrance to the office to start clubs about friendship, the friendship club, the kindness club. Honestly, there were like 3 or 4 clubs that kids were trying to start. And I thought, how wonderful. They needed that, And I loved seeing how the ripple effect happened, because you never know, right?
Yeah.
You do something, you don't know who it might impact that makes a difference for them.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. So that was the Hearts Project.
That's a great project.
Thank you. It meant a lot.
Well, I'm sure, and you talked about it reverberating out to the community. That's just awesome.
Yeah.
So where can people find more information about you, or how can they find you?
They can find my artwork at KarenLynnIngalls.com, and also my teaching, because I am a teacher. I've been teaching art to mostly adults for over 20 years now. And that is at NapaValleyArtWorkshops.com. And since COVID, I went online. I'm only teaching online right now. And so people have been able to join us from all over the country without having to fly here, which is really nice.
That's great.
Yeah. So I've got some upcoming classes that'll be starting this summer. And if people are interested, I hope they'll check it out.
Oh, that's great. We will put all of that in the show links.
Thank you.
You're phenomenal artist, and such a joy, such an inspiration. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You are so welcome, and thank you. I've enjoyed it tremendously.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's a wrap for today's show. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. We will see you on the next episode.